Everyone, what's going on? Yesterday in the mainstream media, one of the major news stories was the murder of this former Iowa State Cyclone golfer named Celia Barquin Arozamena. And if you're new to this channel, what I talk about is gematria, which is the practice of coding numbers into words and phrases, and also patterns and signs and symbolism that all stem back to ancient knowledge, such as what is called Hermeticism, and also something called Kabbalah, which is Jewish mysticism. And within Kabbalah, there was a belief that God created the world by merging the letter with the number. Hence, that's where gematria comes from, the practice of coding numbers into words and phrases. And there are people who understand this knowledge, and they're they are controlling our mainstream media. They are controlling our sports leagues. They control our told history. They are using this knowledge to absolutely rule over the rest of us. And, it's not just about coding numbers into letters. There are signs and symbols and patterns that exist as well. Within Hermeticism, there's the belief that everything has a vibration, and with these signs and symbols and, letters and numbers have a certain vibration, a certain frequency. What I'm pretty sure is going on is they're using these mainstream media articles in our sports leagues and, just everything. If you just look at, Monster Energy drink that has the Vav 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 on it, right? The 666 and the Jewish lettering and whatever. They're putting these signs and symbols in front of our face every single day, and, when they put these major stories out, it gets enough people to think about it, and it affects the vibrations and the way this world works. And these people understand this, and they're essentially playing God, and they're ruling over us with this knowledge. And this girl was absolutely murdered by the numbers. And if you think that's far-fetched, just think about the band Slipknot that's also from Iowa. If you look up the band Slipknot, they have a song even called Gematria, the Killing Name. Gematria, the Killing Name. Now, why would Slipknot have a song called Gematria, the Killing Name, right? And their bass player, who's named Paul Gray, he died by the numbers. He was 38 years old. He died after this song came out. The word gematria in gematria equals 38. Like I said, it stems back to Kabbalah, which is Jewish mysticism. Kabbalah, 38. His name, Paul Gray, 38. They also called him the Pig, 38. He was 38 years old. What are the odds, And look at this. Look at Iowa State here. Iowa State, 32. It's in Ames, Iowa. 32. Would you believe ISU, the abbreviation for the college? 32. They're called the Cyclones. Just the word cyclone equals 32. I mean, really, I could go on all day here. Like, think about Iowa Hawkeyes even. Iowa Hawkeyes, 62. And their football coach right now is Kirk Ferentz, 62. That's why Niall Kinnick, who Kinnick Stadium is named after, they told us that he died on the date of June 2nd, 6'2". And he wore number 24 for Iowa. Supposedly died at the age of 24 when he went to the war or whatever. They never did find his body or anything, right? Dies on 6'2", supposedly. The age of 24. Wore number 24. My favorite is Michigan and Tom Brady. Michigan Wolverines. Look at this. Michigan Wolverines, 98. Tom Brady, 98 in gematria. He became the starter at Michigan in the year 98. This Jim Harbaugh, the coach of Michigan, 98. Look at this. New England Patriots, 98. Just the word Patriots, 98 in gematria. How ridiculous. Remember, just before Super Bowl 49, Tom Brady and his wife Gisele Bundchen So the Brady Bunch-Chin house, he sold his house to Dr. Dre just before Super Bowl 49, like just days after Alice from the Brady Bunch had died. And Dr. Dre in Gematria equals 49. He was 49 years old when he bought the Brady Bunch-Chin house, and he's born on the 49th day of the year. And then the Patriots went on to win Super Bowl 49. And just before that, Tom Brady broke Joe Montana's record of 49 touchdowns, and Joe Montana, the famous 49er. How ridiculous. In that Super Bowl 49, they had a Brady Bunch commercial, 98, and it was a Snickers commercial. Snickers, 98. And then Tom Brady wins the Super Bowl. Oh, the odds. Anyway, hopefully you understand what I am showing here. So now we're getting the story of this Iowa State golfer who was 22 years old and supposedly killed by a 22-year-old homeless guy or whatever. Homeless guy that lived in a tent. And they found her body supposedly in the pond. The word pond equals 22. So killed by a 22-year-old. She's 22 years old. They found her in a pond. The word golf equals 22 in Gematria. I mean, what are the odds? Golf 22, pond 22. She was 22 years old. Her killer's 22 years old. ISU also equals 22. The 22nd prime number is 79, and the word murder equals 79. The word murder, point that out really quick. Murder equals 79. Murder also equals 34, and that's why we got the death of Molly Tibbetts 34 days after she went missing, right? Molly Tibbetts 34 days later. Murder equals 34. I'll leave a link to my video in the description of that. It was all about the flag symbolism. Brooklyn, Iowa, where she's from, that town has a flag of all of the states and whatnot, and it is a huge ritual in regards to kneeling during the national anthem, tons and tons of flag symbolism that is going on. So what else is interesting about this 22 number, though? So there's all these 22s here, and when you look her up, you find out, too, that she just won the 22nd Big 12 Women's Golf Championship. She won the 22nd one, and it happened on the 22nd day of April this year. So she just won the 22nd one on the 22nd day of April, and then now she's dying at 22, getting murdered by somebody who's 22 years old. The word golf in Gematria equals 22. ISU 22. Found in a pond. Pond equals 22. Let me think the word tent. The word tent equals 22. And they kept telling us that the killer lived in a tent because he was homeless or whatever, They also, if you go from her birthday to the day that she supposedly died, 2 months and 12 days, and her name, the way the media kept presenting it, Celia Barquin, that just so happens to equal 212. So 2 months and 12 days after her birthday, she dies, and her name, the way the media kept portraying it, equals 212. A lot like how many a span of days that she died away from. She even died in the golf course was called Coldwater Golf Links. Coldwater Golf Links in Gematria equals 100 in reverse reduced, and the alphabetic order, it equals 206. And her full name, Celia Barquin Arozamena, equals 206, and the killer's name, his full name, Daniel Richards, equals 100, right? Both fitting for this golf course she supposedly got murdered at. And if you don't understand what I'm talking about with these 4 ciphers, I'll leave a link to this website. You can come and check it out, but there's 4 main ciphers in Gematria. It is the alphabetic order. A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3, until you get up to Z. That's 26, because it's the 26th letter of the alphabet. So my name would be D is the 4th letter, A the 1st letter, N the 14th, and you add them up, you get 19. This method right here is just the reduction method where you reduce it to numerology. So when you get to like N is the 14th letter, you just take 1 plus 4 is 5. Or P, the 16th letter. 1 plus 6 is 7. and these other two are just the reverse. And they're important because of Hermeticism, because in Hermeticism, there's the belief that everything is the same and everything is the opposite. And think about Kabbalah with the belief that God created the world by merging the letter with the number. And look at this. God equals 10 and 55 in reverse. Look at the word Satan equals. The frontwards way, 55 and 10. You know? That's why Marilyn Manson has a song called Say 10. Like this, Say 10. And he says, you say God, and I say 10. It's because Marilyn Manson studies Kabbalah, just like Roseanne Barr, just like Ariana Grande, just like pretty much everybody within Hollywood and, all these celebrities. They all understand this, and if they don't understand it, they're being told what to do by people who do understand it. Say 10, think about it. God equals 10. Satan equals 10. The word heaven equals 55, like God and Satan. Numerology, 55, like God and Satan. Notice the word hell equals 17, just like God, too. The alphabet's 26 letters. The word letter equals 26. The word God equals 26. The word God in Hebrew equals 26. It's absolutely no coincidence. So, if you want another great example, the word Republican, 47 the frontwards way. Democrat, 47 the reverse way. What are the odds? White House, 47. The word president, 47 the other way. Okay? The word government also equals 47. The people who understand this knowledge, a majority of them, are Freemasons, the Freemason headquarters in Washington, D.C., named after a 33rd degree Freemason. That's why they have 33 pillars outside of their building in Washington, D.C. That's why they tell us George Washington was born on 2/11 on the old calendar. 2/11 is the 47th prime number. The Freemason square and compass is set at 47 degrees. The top of it's called the pole star that equals 47 in gematria. They believe in Euclid's 47th problem about the foundation of a perfect square because they're builders, but Euclid's 47th problem. I mean, absolutely ridiculous. That's why a known Freemason, Henry Ford, he died on 4/7 of the year 47, and Ford Motor Company equals 2/11. So, a big 22 thing. So now, what I'm going to talk about is how I've been paying attention to this system in my own life, and when you notice these patterns within the mainstream media, if you pay attention to things that are going on in your own life, they are absolutely synced up to what is going on in the mainstream media. And that's what Kabbalah is kind of about, following these signs and symbolism. Whatever God exactly is, it absolutely exists, and it's been helping me. Whatever God truly is. If God is just some type of mathematical sequence, if it really is, angels and demons and whatever, I don't have the slightest clue. But I know that there is something that is helping me to understand this and, helping me to see the pattern a lot better. And that's why I don't talk about numbers constantly on this channel, because there's patterns and themes that are going on that are a lot more important. And I was writing up this blog post about this, this story, and I was thinking, how interesting is it? We just had the death of Molly Tibbetts, that was all about the Iowa Hawkeyes, and she was a woman jogger or whatever, and then I was thinking, now we're getting the story of an Iowa State Cyclone player, a woman dying on a golf course, and I started thinking, I was like, Iowa State's first game got canceled this year in football, so they opened up the season against Iowa even. And also, her name, Celia, if you watch my video with Molly Tibbetts, I talked about how her middle name was Cecilia and why that was important. And Celia it comes from the word Cecilia. So we got the death of Molly, Cecilia Tibbetts, and now we're getting the death of this girl named Celia, which I thought was interesting. And anyway, right as I started thinking about how this concept, I was like, Celia, Cecilia, it's Iowa State. Iowa State's first game was against Iowa this year, a big rivalry. Right as I said that, or thought that in my head, I heard the TV say the name Celia. And I was like, I've never really heard that name. I don't know anybody even named Celia. And I looked up and the Cleveland show was playing on my TV. And the whole episode was about Cleveland not listening to his wife. I went back and watched it, and the episode is about Cleveland not listening to his wife, and she wants to go back to college and fulfill her dream or whatever. So she goes to the University of Miami, and when he realizes that he has to watch the kids and whatnot, he goes to try to find her and bring her back. And she introduces him to her friends or whatever, and she says, "This is Kirsten, and this is Celia." And I was like, huh? I'm thinking about the name Celia, and now it's being said on the TV. Like, yeah, it's pretty, I don't know. I don't know how popular this name is, but I've never really heard it before. And then just after this, Cleveland says, "Celia, Kristen, could you give us a moment?" And then later on he goes, "Celia, wait." And then he goes, "I don't remember the other girl's name," putting emphasis on Celia. And then at the end of this episode, he even brings Celia back up, how he wanted to invite Celia over. And I'm like, I'm writing about this, something is showing me to pay more attention to this name, Celia, right? And what are the odds of this? She goes to the University of Miami, the Miami Hurricanes. Think about Hurricane Florence going on right now. And think about what a cyclone is, an Iowa State cyclone. It could be a tornado, but a tropical cyclone is also a hurricane, right? So a cyclone is going on. She goes to the University of Miami, the Hurricanes. Then I started thinking about, in this episode, there's also a part with CeeLo Green. They do a parody of the song "Fuck You" by CeeLo Green. I was thinking CeeLo, I don't know. It just has similar attributes to Celia, Cecilia, CeeLo. And when I looked up that song, it even says it came out on the album called Lady Killer. I was like, how interesting, Lady Killer, right? And CeeLo equals 22, just like ISU, all the 22s I mentioned above. So, just interesting. And I wonder about CeeLo Green as well. He's from Atlanta, where Super Bowl 53 is going to be held this year. And his name equals 53. CeeLo Green equals 53. He's from Atlanta, where Super Bowl 53 is going to be held this year. Possibly. They like to murder people. So, possibly CeeLo Green or something affiliated with the CeeLo Green is ripe for a sacrifice. Possibly not. Maybe he might sing the national anthem, or, maybe nothing until 3 years down the road that is still connected to this. And I know that might sound strange, but it's just something to document and watch out for. And another big reason why is because just before I made this blog post, I made a blog post about Bert and Ernie supposedly being gay and the Muppets. And if you go back to my Molly Tibbetts videos, I talked about how there was a Molly symbolism thing going on that I kept noticing, and Molly Tibbetts was part of it. And it ended up showing me to Mike and Molly, the show called Mike and Molly, with the Melissa McCarthy. And Melissa McCarthy was just in this movie called The Happy Time Murders that had the Muppets in it, right? So I just documented about the Muppets. Then when I went to CeeLo Green's Wikipedia page, they only have 3 pictures of him on there, and one of them is him with the Muppets. So I know there's something important to CeeLo Green just by following the symbolism. Also, in regards to Super Bowl 53, what's important to the Muppets and CeeLo Green equaling 53 and being from Atlanta where the Super Bowl is held, Jim Henson, in that post I documented about how Jim Henson died age 53 on the 136th day of the year, and Jim Henson in Gematria equals 53 and also 136. His wife's name equals 53. The Muppets equal 53. You know, dies age 53, his name equals 53. The Muppets equal 53, his wife's name equals 53. I also pointed out Gnarls Barkley, which he was in, and the other guy is Danger Mouse, whose name's Brian Burton, who also equals 53 in Gematria. And he got famous by mixing Jay-Z's Black album with the Beatles' White album, which is really, really important to Atlanta and the kneeling during the national anthem stuff with Colin Kaepernick. In 2016, I was talking about how the Atlanta Falcons were very important to the symbolism, and then they went on to make the Super Bowl and lose. And their slogan was called Rise Up, right? Think about that. The blacks kneeling, right? And in Charles Manson's Helter Skelter theory, he's talking about the blacks are going to rise up. And the song that tells black people to rise up is the song called Blackbird. And the Falcons are a black bird, right? About rising up. And think about that. Then the Falcons' whole slogan was Rise Up during the Super Bowl that year. Then last year it was all about the flag symbolism, the flag being sewn in Philadelphia. That's why the Eagles were in the Super Bowl. But I kept talking about how it was still connected to Charles Manson, and then Charles Manson died not even a month later in November. And then, of course, we got Justin Timberlake, who sang the halftime show at the Super Bowl last year. And the last time he was at a Super Bowl doing the halftime show was when he showed Janet Jackson's boob, singing songs off of her album Rhythm Nation 1814, that she says is in honor of the year Francis Scott Key wrote the national anthem. What are the odds, right? And the reason that's important is the next year at the Super Bowl, they had Paul McCartney play the halftime show to be a safe bet. And Paul McCartney is the guy who wrote Helter Skelter and also the song Blackbird. And his birthday just happens to be 231 days before the Super Bowl this year. And his name equals 53. And the national anthem equals 231. So it's super important to this year still. So this Danger Mouse guy, definitely someone to watch out for. I don't really know that much about him. I was just kind of skimming through some information. Another interesting thing about the Beatles' White Album, when I went back and looked at it, it has 4 sides to it, and the second side, or what they consider track 11, is called Blackbird, right? And it's their 9th studio album. So 9th album, track 11, a lot like a 9/11. And it says side 3 and it starts them over, but if you really count them down, 11, 12, whatever, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. It's a lot like the Helter Skelter is a lot like the 23rd track of the 9th studio album, 923, which is really important. Both numbers really important to what has been coded all of this year and previous years. 923 is that special number to the day Donald Trump called out the NFL for kneeling. He did it on September 23rd, or also 23/9, and the flag was sewn at 239 Arch Street, and Colin Kaepernick knelt originally on the 239th day of the year, and in Gematria, Atlanta Falcons equal 239. Think about how a clock has, think about military time. 11 is also 23. So just interesting at 2309, it's also 1109. A lot like, 9 and 23 and 11, 9. They have a relationship. So anyway, as I continued to write this blog post, it was on Hulu. So the Cleveland show was just playing in the background. I wasn't really watching it that much. And I just decided to stop and think for a second. I looked up And right as I looked up later, the Cleveland was listening to the radio in his car and it said women's sports, and they made a joke about women's sports. And just think about that in regards to, this woman just dying. Celia, she dies on the golf course or whatever, women's sports. And I thought interesting and I didn't document it right away. I was just like, huh, that's pretty weird, women's sports. And I was still researching some stuff about it, and the next episode had started, and the same thing happened. I just randomly looked up at the TV, and this time it said, in a golf tournament this weekend, right? And the whole episode was all about, I didn't go back and watch it. I think it was about Cleveland being mad about his dad not wanting him to golf with him or something. So it's like, what are the odds? The first episode talks about Celia, makes a joke about Celia. Then this one talks about women's sports. And then the next one I look up at, it talks about a golf tournament. Like, what are the odds of that? That is just absolutely too strange to not point out. So, you know, my own life is somehow connected, and there's something that is guiding me and showing me, something that made me randomly look up at the TV at this time to notice this pattern. And, you know, can't count how many times I've talked about stuff like this, and the things that I'm following. I'm not always, don't exactly always know what is going to happen or where it's going to happen, but just a few months back I talked about how there was a drowning theme, and then I said possibly we're going to get a drowning story in the mainstream media, and the next day we got the duck boat drowning, and I talked about a bridge collapse all year, and how the Super Bowl was synced up to bridge collapses and a major bridge collapse, because there was in Minneapolis where we had the major bridge collapse. Then we got a major bridge collapse that happened in Italy, and within all that bridge stuff, I talked about how it's connected to Pope Francis. Think about where Pope Francis is even from, right? From Italy. The Pope and the Vatican and whatnot. So, and there's many, many other things that I've talked about, and how they're synced up by following these synchronicity things that happen in my life and paying attention to the mainstream media. And, it doesn't take away that there are people who control our media and control our sports leagues, because that's absolutely true. And everything in this world, though, is somehow all connected. That's what Kabbalah is all about. There's a red string of Kabbalah that, connects everything together. If you ever watch the TV show Touch, it explains a lot more about that. So everything is truly interrelated. So if these people, or, if these people are murdering people by the numbers, and they're creating the media by the numbers, and the sports leagues by the numbers, it's going to manipulate the way that things are going in other people's lives. So if you're just paying attention to the patterns, the patterns are still going to exist, if that makes sense, because it's manipulating everything around us. So there's still going to be patterns there. So I'll leave some links in the description. It's a lot to take in what I'm talking about later on and towards the end of this video here. But I have a lot of videos where I talk about this, and I mean, you'll understand more of what I'm talking about if you've followed what I have been saying. And sometimes it's overwhelming. I know it's overwhelming for people, but if you just go back even 10 videos, you will understand. It might take you 10 hours, but you'll catch up onto what I'm talking about, and hopefully it will start adding up and making more sense in your brain. But I was thinking about Molly and whatever. I talked about how there was a Molly theme as well. So I was like Molly and Celia, and they equal the same thing in gematria. Molly equals 30 and 33. Celia equals 30 and 33. The 30th prime number is 113. Iowa State equals 113, which is interesting. Also, just the state of Iowa has been important to the kneeling during the national anthem, because the only president from Iowa, Herbert Hoover, is the guy who signed the Star-Spangled Banner into Congress to be the official national anthem in 1931. The only president from Iowa, the 29th state, who became the president in the year 1929. Then the stock market crash happened on the 29th day of the year with him and whatnot. Really important to 29. Herbert Hoover, H is the eighth letter. A lot like an 88. Donald Trump Trump equals 88 in Gematria. The word Neil equals 88. The Star Spangled Banner equals 88. Colin Kaepernick equals 88. It's inspired by the Great Garrison flag, the national anthem. Great Garrison flag equals 88 in Gematria. It was sewn by some lady, Mary Pickersgill. Her name equals 88. Died on the day that leaves 88 days in the year. You know, a really, really important thing. That's why the Super Bowl's put a U.S. Bank Stadium that equals 88 in Gematria. That's why the day after the Super Bowl, we got the story, Market Meltdown. That was the major news story in the media. And until October 29th this year, we're still currently in the 88th anniversary of the stock market crash. So, you know, we got the Stoneman Douglas stuff this year, the Valentine's Day Massacre. And think about that. The Valentine's Day Massacre also happened in the year 1929, just before Herbert Hoover became the president on 3/4. And another reason I bring all that up is because Molly Tibbetts was from the town of Brooklyn, and Brooklyn, Iowa, supposedly has a flag of every state in the United States. It's the town of flags, right? And think about that in regards to golf. Each hole has the pin with the flag on it, right? So I feel like there's a riddle there with something to do with the flag symbolism. And maybe there's something to do with Tibet, too. Molly, Celia, and then we got Tibbetts. Maybe there's going to be something to do with Tibet, you know, the area of Tibet. Also, in regards to cyclones, when I was talking about the Muppet stuff, I stumbled upon this part of the thing in there was called the Moore tornado that happened in Oklahoma, and you know it was in Cleveland County and whatnot. Think about the Cleveland show. Iowa State just got done playing Oklahoma, and you know think about a cyclone and a tornado. But what's really interesting about it is so Iowa State just got done playing Oklahoma, and this year there was two games that got canceled on week 1 of the football season, and it was Iowa State and also Nebraska. Nebraska was supposed to play Akron, which is interesting. Think about LeBron James and Akron and Cleveland and whatnot. And my cat keeps jumping on me here, and now this week Iowa State's going to play Akron. So there's something going on there. I don't know what it entails, you know. Iowa State and Nebraska used to be huge rivals. These 4 teams, there's something to watch out for this week. We'll see what happens in the game. You know, I guarantee there's going to be something that's going on with these games. I'm trying to figure it out. You know, not too long ago, we also had a story about that Sydney Loof girl from Lincoln, Nebraska or whatever that was murdered by the numbers. So, you know, just makes me wonder. Sydney Loof, all in the same area. That was back in, I think it was back in like December or something, November. So it was last football season. But what are the odds? Iowa State's going to play Akron this week. Think about the Cleveland show, LeBron James, Akron. Now Nebraska. Nebraska's first game got canceled, just like Iowa State's. Nebraska was going to play Akron. There's something synced up to it. Maybe Iowa's going to have a better season. Maybe Iowa is going to have a good season or something like that. Trying to piece the puzzle together. I'm baffled by it. I see this riddle, but I just can't figure it out. There's something more to it. I know Nebraska equals 145 in Gematria, just like Iowa Hawkeyes equal 145. And the Molly Tibbetts stuff wasn't Molly Tibbetts equal 145, or let's see here. She equals 55 like Iowa Hawkeyes. I know Nebraska equals 145, and so does Iowa Hawkeyes equals 145. So this new girl, Celia, got murdered on the date of 17/9, a lot like 179. If you've been following me for a while, I've been talking a lot about the Chicago Cubs and the Cleveland Indians possibly being in the World Series again. And in 2016, when I predicted them to be in the World Series, it had a lot to do with Iowa and Nebraska. So, Chicago, Illinois equals 145. And the Iowa Cubs, you know, there's the Iowa Cubs and whatnot. Think about the Cleveland show yet again. I talked about the Omaha people, used to be called the Maha people, who were originally from the Cleveland area or the Ohio area, and it was synced up to. I was talking about this all summer, and then all of a sudden we started getting the Dakota Access Pipeline stories in the mainstream media, right? Right around the time the Indians make the World Series, the mainstream media is all about the Dakota Access Pipeline and the Keystone Pipeline, right? Which is also interesting with South Dakota State here. And I believe this week they're playing North Dakota or North Dakota State, one of them. So possibly it's something pointing to that. Maybe there's something to do with the Native American theming that I was talking about. It even it even did connect to Iowa. It connected to Iowa even more because of the death of Kyle Calloway, who died in Arizona. And I was talking about the Anasazi Indians and whatnot in the movie The Darkness that came out that year. So I'm gonna leave the video there. I gotta think more on this puzzle, but there's an absolute puzzle. That girl named Celia for a reason because Molly Cecilia Tibbetts, and there's just these two games being canceled now. Iowa State's gonna play Akron. I don't know. There's a riddle there. I don't know what the riddle is. But it's funny too. Sorry, I am rambling, but talked about how the death of my uncle, how he was the world's biggest Nebraska hater in the entire world, and he died earlier this year. And now Nebraska starts off 0-2 for what, the first time in 57 years or something. And you know they scored 19 points, and the last time that they started off 0-2, they went 1-9. So it would be pretty fitting if. And the Bears are even doing awesome. And the Bears were the other team I talked about with my uncle. Was that he was a huge Bears fan, and he absolutely hated Nebraska. Now Nebraska's losing, and the Bears actually won a game. So I don't know. We'll see how this rest of the season plays out. But it'd be interesting if the Bears have a good season and Nebraska sucks all season. What are the odds? But like I said, we'll leave it there. Hopefully it makes sense. I'll leave some links in the description. Hopefully it'll make more sense. I've got to the point where I don't know how to explain it any better than I am. So, have a good one. Peace.